Hi, everyone. We've set up this Being an Engineer podcast as an industry knowledge repository, if you will. We hope it'll be a tool where engineers can learn about and connect with other companies, technologies, people, resources, and opportunities. So make some connections and enjoy the show.
If you know that it's actually impacting somebody else's life, somebody else's job, then you work a lot, that much harder because you know what the result will be.
Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we are speaking with Carla Minett, who has a master's degree in mechanical engineering and is the owner at Minett Consulting, where she teaches engineering leadership through soft skills enhancement and practical experience. Carla, welcome to the show.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So what made you decide to become an engineer?
Well, honestly, I kind of stumbled upon it. And when I was in college, I was not sure about what direction I wanted to take. So I took just classes that I enjoyed, like physics and calculus and, all the fun stuff. And then I realized that most of the students, my classmates, happened to be engineers. So once I was there, it was more of I guess I can do that too. So I enrolled for engineering, and it was a great decision. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. Were there things that you did growing up that, were conducive to engineering or, building things or taking things apart, anything like that?
Yes. I think all of us kind of did something like that in our childhood. Yes, I very much enjoyed trying to open up little cars, like toy cars, and seeing,
Nice.
In the inside how they worked.
Yeah.
Or even just take the pieces out and put them together with other pieces from different toys and just making something different. So
Yeah.
I was always intrigued by it.
Sometimes people ask me, what should I do? Younger engineers or engineering students or even younger, high school age kids ask me, what should I do if I want to become an engineer? Like, what are some of the things I should do to prepare? And I think one of the best things that people can do is just take stuff apart, right? Take stuff apart and learn how it works, see what's going on inside that thing, and hopefully put it back together too, and it still works after that. But at least take stuff apart and learn how it works. There's a lot that you can learn by doing that.
Yeah.
Well, you were actually born in Peru and lived there until, I think, if I have this correct, your late teens, at which point you emigrated to the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about just that whole process and what was the impetus for moving to the U.S. and what were some of the challenges associated with it?
Sure. So I was around 17 years old. At that age, I had already graduated from high school in Peru, and I had actually qualified to start, well, I guess you would call it college or university down there. And then my parents decided to move to the U.S. And because I was only 17, the whole family came with them. Me and my brothers, we all came together. In Peru, you're not of adult age until you're 21.
Oh,
so
interesting.
It was a family decision. And I think that we were so close, as a family, that we would have stuck together anyway.
Yeah.
So the first time we moved to Connecticut, and then I was there for maybe 2 years. I decided to go to high school for a year and a half. So I did high school again. So I went in as a junior halfway through. And then I did the senior year as well. And the purpose of that was to get immersed and familiarized with the English language and just the culture and also to learn history. So that was the idea. It was kind of a, just learn by doing, because I did not take English lessons until it was maybe a month or two before I moved to the U.S.
Procrastinator.
So, yeah. Yes. So, when I came here, I didn't speak much English. So it was a fun, interesting experience for sure. And cultural shock as well. So I remember just a funny story when I met some friends, and she introduced me to her boyfriend and some other friends. And I went ahead and gave him a kiss in the cheek. That is culturally how we meet people, how we greet people. And she was just like so I don't know, maybe she was uncomfortable. I don't know what it was, but she got a little nervous.
Oh, how
And
funny.
then I found out that it was just, it's just, getting adjusted to a new culture and a new language and new customs. It was definitely a transition there. And then a couple of years later, I found out about this program for engineering at Old Dominion University. By that time, I was already kind of thinking that I may be interested in it. And I moved to Virginia. And that's where I went to a community college. And then I went to Old Dominion University. But before I did that, I was interested in going for fashion design and merchandising somewhere in Connecticut. So like I mentioned before, in the beginning, I wasn't really sure which direction I wanted to go. But then once I decided that I wanted to explore the engineering path, I moved down here to Virginia to continue my education.
Wonderful. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's funny about the kiss on the cheek thing. I grew up in Hawaii, and it's the same thing there. You greet people with like a kiss on the cheek. I mean, maybe not guys with guys, but like men and women, they'll greet each other with a kiss on the cheek. But that's not so much the case here on the continental U.S., is it?
No. I learned that the hard way.
That's funny. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of your career. We'll get into what you're doing right now, which is running your own consultancy. But tell us a little bit about your career before Minett Consulting.
Yes. So I spent some time with the city of Norfolk with an amazing manager. I had an internship there. And then I also spent some time in the HVAC industry with, designing HVAC systems. And then I spent most of my career in the shipbuilding industry, in which I actually got to explore a wide variety of organizations because the shipyard is one of the biggest employers in this area. So they have in-house, they have facilities, engineering, they have everything, every department, that they need. So I got to explore these different organizations within the shipyard, kind of like micro organizations, if you will. They were very different functionally. And that was really cool. And honestly, it wasn't until I got to explore all those different organizations and get to go around in the company that the transformation really began as far as being able to expand my skills, my own skills, and just realizing that there is so much more that can happen. And then when we actually meet other leaders, other senior leaders in the companies, because I feel like sometimes we are all put in one department, and if we don't ever leave that department, we think that the leadership looks the way we're seeing it right there. But, I came to realize that that wasn't the case, that there was so much more out there. And you can ask me anything about that. That's a very exciting time to me of my career.
Yeah, I've never talked with anyone who was in the shipbuilding industry. Huh. That's super interesting. This is going to be maybe a little bit of a vague question, so hopefully you can turn this into something, and if not, that's fine too. Is there anything about the shipbuilding industry, especially within the context of engineering, that would be just kind of an interesting, fun fact, or something that maybe those of us outside of that industry have just never even considered because we've never been exposed to it? But I don't know, anything like that comes to mind that might be interesting to share?
Oh, there's just so much. So much. I mean, from the just aspects of building a ship, everything that goes into it, and all the components that go into it. But I'll tell you more generally as far as working in a shipyard. Maybe that was really cool to me. I worked where you would see the ships themselves. You would see the big modules, and so there was a lot of time when I was in the shipyard, when I worked on the shipyard, and I just felt like I was in this big playground, and it was the coolest playground in the world. I mean, nobody else has toys like this in their playground.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was really neat, being able to see all that and people working at it too.
Probably similar in a way to working at like the Boeing plant, right? Where they're building these giant airplanes in humongous hangars. Yeah.
Yes. It's probably very much like that.
Big, cool toys. All right. I went through the Boeing tour up in Washington. That was really cool, especially as an engineer. Yeah. Well, at a certain point in your career, I guess you saw a need for engineering leadership training and decided that that's what you were going to pursue. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Sure. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, when I joined a rotational program in the shipyard, I got to experience different areas of the company, and it broadened my perspective, and it exposed me to a wide array of leadership styles and inspiring leaders. So that was a big key component in my growth as a professional in the engineering industry. And I felt like when my coworkers that I quote unquote left behind, that stayed in that department, like I felt that they couldn't even imagine all that it was out there. Like until you go out there, you don't know what's out there. But being able to see that there were more ways to lead people, more ways to work, and it was very eye-opening for me, and it was it really helped me grow individually as well. So in addition to the rotational program, I also was a part of a emerging leaders program. And one of the exercises that we did there that I always remember is they said, think back, think of a few leaders that you have worked with, and come up, draw on the board 5 top traits that helped you, grow and develop, or that you really enjoyed about that person. And when I did that, that was my realization that I had met some very inspiring people. And once I made that little list, it was kind of like my guiding light. This is how I want to be. That's the kind of person, that's the kind of leader I want to be. And it was just really eye-opening. I would have never experienced, would have never known that had I stayed in the same department my entire career. And I know that there were a lot of people in, like maybe senior engineers, that have been the case, and I guess maybe that's how it used to be. Like people just, you picked where you worked, and that's where you stayed your whole career. So it was just eye-opening for me, for sure. So anyway, once I saw the difference that it made to go from one leadership to another one throughout these organizations, I was able to see in myself and my peers the transformation that it had in us, and how we grew, and how we our performance increased, our ability to collaborate increased, just a series of skills increased once we were under these different type of leaderships that perhaps worked a little bit better than others. So that's when I saw the need for leadership and the engineering industry. In addition to the fact that just as engineers, you probably seen the same thing, is when you are, if anyone as an engineer is under the management, that this person may not want to be a manager, but because he was highly skilled technical, maybe the great, technical engineer in the department was asked to be a manager, and then this person does not desire to be a manager. This person just wants to do their drawings or whatever that may be. So I have seen how the team struggles, because the team, needs a leader. And when that leader just, has this tendency to want to just be left alone, for lack of better words, then it's challenging. And then you can see that in employee, turnover. You see that, and it's very costly to engineering companies. So hence that's why I'm here now.
Yeah. So following that experience, you developed this program called Engineers to Leaders, and use that to teach leadership to the organizations that you work with, which are generally engineering companies. Can you give us maybe an overview of the program, and if you're able to, one or two very specific, even actionable areas of the program that folks, engineers who are listening to this podcast today can go out and actually do those things?
Sure. Yeah, I think that the most actionable piece of the Engineers to Leaders program would be the EQ focus, the emotional intelligence focus. And the reason it's such an important piece of this program is because I feel like engineers, like many other professionals, their training in university is mostly technical. You don't get leadership training in an engineering, profession. So unless it is intentionally done, intentionally offered to you. So I know that engineers, in order to transition to leadership, there has to be that transition period where they are stimulated, and they can grow and they can develop and they can learn to be able to effectively turn into a leader. I think that there's a lot of engineers that could, they do their best, but until they're offered these opportunities, it really is, it's a little bit of a struggle from what I've seen. So the Engineers to Leaders program is based on this Engineers to Leaders model. And the model has 4 components, 4 pillars, and they are experiential, immersive, rotational, and collaborative. So these are the 4 components that I feel that are really key in accelerating the development of an engineer in this case. I'm sure it works for many other professions as well. But in this case, it is made for engineers because as an engineer myself and as a person who's gone through this transformation as well, it is who I can relate to and who I can understand. So like I said, the components are experiential. Experiential is essentially you will not have more experience unless you get experience. So you need to be given the opportunity to get this wide array of experiences to be able to increase your resume. And a lot of times you don't need to spend 20 years to have learned, have experienced 4 different things. Sometimes you can do that in a shorter period of time. And that's where the rotational aspect comes into play. So that's accelerating the development because we're putting people through different experiences. But it is a thought out program in a sense that if you were to just send people off and trying to rush this through without thinking of all the pieces that need to come together, it's not likely to succeed. It's more likely to just put a lot of pressure on the engineer. So there's different pieces that I think about when I think about the Engineers to Leaders model. And then we were talking about the immersive part of it. That goes back to me learning English by immersion. Is really the best way to learn, in my opinion. It is the way that things really stick in your head the best. And it also, I feel like it increases the sense of accountability and ownership for your job because you're not just there, I'm just not doing a project for somebody else that belongs to somebody else. You actually taking on your own project. That's your baby. You're responsible for it. You're immersed in it. Like you're not an outsider looking in, you're inside. So that's the immersive pillar. And the collaborative pillar, it has to do with just trying to break those silos that happen very commonly in engineering, where people may get comfortable, or not so much comfortable, but so focused on making sure that their component succeeds that oftentimes we forget to think about how important it is to make sure that this is working together as a system and is really doing what the company needs, what's best for the company as a whole. So those are the 4 components. And you asked me, what is something that engineers could probably do that would be pretty actionable? I would say that, like I mentioned before, the EQ, the emotional intelligence, and I'll tell you why. I don't know. A lot of people misinterpret emotional intelligence and they think it's about feelings. However, emotional intelligence is about using emotional information effectively to help you achieve your goals. And the truth is that we're using emotional information whether we want to or not. Now, the thing is, if we are aware that we're doing it and we know how to do it effectively, then we're going to achieve our goals. But if we're not aware of it, it may be actually holding us back from getting to where we want to get.
Yeah.
So
if I'm an engineer listening to this and I hear you talking about EQ, emotional intelligence, and I think to myself, if I'm aware enough even to realize, you know what, I think that's an area that I should improve in. What's something that I can do, today to take action and improve my emotional intelligence?
I think the first step is always assess. As an engineer, always assess, take an assessment. There's the one that I use is the EQI 2.0. And the reason I use this, there are other models. The reason I like this model is because it's very actionable. So just to give you an example, the 5 areas that this model breaks your emotional intelligence score into is the first one is self-perception. The second one is self-expression. The third one is interpersonal. The fourth one is decision-making. And the fifth one is stress management. So it is very easy, once you get your emotional intelligence score, it's very easy to pinpoint the areas that you feel, that you realize that you need to work on, and go into it and know exactly what type of work you need to do and what kind of outcome you're looking for. For example, with the stress management, there are 3 pieces underneath it, which is flexibility, stress tolerance, optimism. Decision-making, for it will be problem-solving, reality testing, impulse control. So you can zoom in into any of those little areas, and you are guided by the scores. So that is just, in order to do something right away, I would say just take the assessment. It only takes about 15 minutes maybe. And then you will have a breakdown of all your emotional intelligence skills, and it will be nicely grouped into components that will help you really zoom into, what areas you would like to develop, and then take it from there.
Really cool. I'm actually going to do that myself. I'm interested to see what my EQ score is. Now, is this something that anyone can just Google and find and take themselves, or is this something that you do like through a facilitator such as yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you'll do it through a facilitator. And if you Google it, you just find another person that's facilitating it.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned, there are different models. The model that I use is this one, the one that has the 5 components.
Cool. It sounds like a very useful tool.
Yeah.
Let me take a very quick break here and share with the listeners that teampipeline.us is where you can learn more about how we help medical device and other product engineering or manufacturing teams develop turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines to characterize, inspect, assemble, manufacture, and perform verification testing on your devices. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Carla Minett. And Carla, what are a few of the most common barriers that you see engineers stumbling over, or maybe the organizations that employ engineers stumbling over as they strive to develop leadership within their organizations?
I would think that some of the biggest barriers would be to see the need to be able to quantify the leadership development need. Because engineers, we're very practical people. We are trying to solve problems, and solve problems that we can put a number to, that we can touch, maybe even, and see. So, and leadership development, the need for leadership development is something that you experience more so. So if you have that self-awareness, to be able to notice that the challenges that you're having are related to the lack of these soft skills, then that's when you're able to put enough value in it and decide that this is something worth investing in.
Are there any concrete signs that engineering organizations should be looking out for, that when we see these signs, we know, this is a leadership problem that we need to address?
Absolutely. So employee turnover, for sure. That's the biggest one. They say there's this statistic, and I can't remember the number, but they say, people don't leave companies, they leave their managers, or they don't leave jobs, they leave their managers. I kind of have my own opinion on that one, because I feel like the companies are the ones that put the manager in that position without any proper training.
Good point. Right.
So it is, yes, I feel like it is our responsibility to help these new managers broaden their perspectives, and to help them see that the need for leadership development, and help them experience the benefits of leadership development for them.
Do you recall any instances when you were an engineer, working as an engineer yourself? Of course, you're still an engineer. But do you remember any specific situations where something happened and you realized, you learned, this is a leadership skill. This is something I need to remember. This might be something I want to teach others in the future. Any stories like that you remember happening to you when you were working as an engineer that now you use to teach engineering organizations how to develop leaders?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. There's just so many experiences. I think for me personally, it would be the development of empathy. I'm not an unempathetic person, but I know that I can leverage that skill better in engineering and in leadership. The reason being is because, like I said, at least for me as an engineer, I was very results-oriented, practical person. We are here to do our job, and we're here to accomplish this task by this deadline. But as I grew as a professional and, in my positions, I realized that we cannot forget that we're humans, right? If we were working with robots, then yes, perhaps just, we are going to just focus on getting things done. I think that it is part of the business that hires people and humans is taking into account for that human factor and allowing for our skills to develop to be able to manage those human interactions. And that's when we go back to the EQ portion of it. So I feel like had I known about these emotional intelligence assessment and development before I went on and rapidly went through these different organizations and try to, turn around the projects in short periods of time, I feel like had I have that awareness of my emotional intelligence and what areas I could improve, it would have saved me a lot of pain, and pain in a way that is just, you either learn by struggling, or you learn by maybe being presented to a different option or to different thoughts beforehand. So
yeah, there's an individual on our team here who really thrives on being recognized, not in like a prideful or inappropriate way at all. He just that's very fulfilling to him to be recognized. And he was self-aware enough to share that with me at some point in the past. And so over the years, I've looked for opportunities to recognize him in front of the group. And it's so amazing and he's always doing wonderful things. So it's not terribly hard, right? But when I am aware enough to remember that and then in front of the rest of the team say, oh, hey, so-and-so solved this problem or came up with this really great idea and this is how it helped the project, and that just see his face light up, right? Because he's so pleased that his efforts have been recognized. So just things like that I've seen, being aware of what's meaningful to people on your team and then taking action on those items.
Yes, definitely.
Well, you are an engineer yourself, and apparently you're also married to an engineer, which must be fun. Yeah. What's something that you've learned about the mindset of an engineer that you've been able to incorporate into your consulting practice?
Something about the mindset of an engineer. I think that we can be so different. I think that even within the profession of the engineers, we can have aerospace engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, which my husband is electrical engineer. You can have civil engineer, biomedical engineer. And so I think we all have a subtle difference as well when it comes to our mindsets. And I think it really depends on each individual. I have met engineers that are very open-minded, whereas I've met engineers that are much more close-minded. So I think it really depends on who you come across. The ones that may have been more close-minded, I would like to say that it may be perhaps because they weren't exposed to more variety, more diversity, so that they can see that there's more to what they're doing than just what they're exposed to. For those who are more open-minded, they are typically the ones that are a little bit more extroverted and typically more risk. They're more willing to take risk and to put themselves out there. And I've seen both.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. How about, you talked about this a little before where maybe there's an engineer who's very gifted technically and that engineer gets promoted to be a manager. Do you think that should always be the goal for engineers? Is that just the natural progression, get really, really good technically and then move into leadership? Or are there other paths that engineers should consider outside of just going into leadership?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I don't think that all engineers should go into the managerial route. And actually, when I was working as an engineer, one of my mentorship meetings with my mentor was to discuss my career path. And the two paths were presented to me as saying, like, you can grow within the engineering profession. You can continue to be an engineer, all the way to being a senior engineer, or you can go the leadership path, and go on to being a team lead and then a manager and then so on. So while I don't think that every engineer should go the managerial path, I think that the skills, the soft skills required to be an effective leader are extremely beneficial, and I think even essential for engineers to be able to do their work effectively, because we don't work in silos, we don't work in bubbles. We really need to be able to work and collaborate with others. That's a leadership skill. We really be able to lead ourselves and lead our projects and lead those people who are helping us with our own projects. So whether we go down the managerial route or we continue to develop as engineers in the technical route, I think that we need to understand as engineers that we need to be able to work with others, and we need to develop our own self-awareness, because if we don't know where we stand, we don't know what we want, we don't understand, what we even are pursuing, then how do we communicate that to others effectively? How do we work well as a team? So I think that, like I said, while I don't think that every engineer should become, should go and be a manager. If they want to, of course, they can develop those skills. But I do think that all engineers should be presented with the opportunity to develop those soft skills.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And this is true for not just engineers, but probably any profession. Going into leadership or management shouldn't necessarily be the default path. I know engineers who are really incredibly good engineers, far better engineers than I will ever be. And they're probably more valuable in that kind of subject matter expert role than they would be in a leadership role. So it's different for everyone. And I don't think that engineers should necessarily just go to the default of, I need to move into leadership.
Right. Yeah. And I think that may also be maybe the lack of having that conversation where it is said, there's more than one path. Because everybody, craves to become more, to reach the next level, and just having that conversation as to, you can go down the engineering path as well. I think that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So to all of you listeners right now, you don't have to go into leadership. The world needs generals, of course, but we also need really good soldiers.
Absolutely.
What can you think of, in your opinion, what's one of the best pieces of advice that you've given to one of your clients, and how did it help that organization?
Yeah. So I think that when we look at the organization and we want to implement change, because even establishing a leadership development program is change, it does impact not only the people that join the program, but also those around them. Especially when you're looking at the using the engineers to leaders model, it involves rotations. And there's a reason for that, because we want to amplify the impact of this program. We don't want to just focus on one person helping this one individual alone. We're looking at more of a systematic approach. So I think that even when implementing a program, it is a change. So there has to be change management. And the biggest piece I would say is not everything has to be done at once. So the best thing that you can do really is sometimes you have to have a phase approach, which, you can have, for phase one, we're going to do maybe a smaller group, a selective group of people that you already know that are more willing to try different things and more willing to keep an open mind, even if things maybe don't work out the way you want, you thought they would. So it's nice to always try out a new program or the implementation of a new software, perhaps, with a smaller group of individuals that are willing to to keep in positive mind and work with you to make the tweaks necessary and iron out your processes before taking it out to the bigger quantities.
Yeah.
So.
Well, just a couple more questions here, and then I think we'll wrap things up. Specifically within the context of your role as an engineer, what is one thing that frustrates you, and also one thing that brings you joy?
I had a hard time thinking about something that frustrates me as an engineer because I am that open-minded, optimistic engineer. So I'm just thinking...
maybe closed-minded, pessimistic engineers is what frustrates you.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe so. So I found that whenever I encounter a challenge as an engineer or a roadblock, I will find a way, find another way. We'll, go around and try to find somebody that can help me, somebody that's willing to help me. But yes, if I found people that are maybe very short or very close-minded or even sometimes a little angry, that could really shut down, people. And I try to remind myself, it's not about me. If they are this way, they are this way, not because of me. So that could be frustrating in the sense that I'm trying to do my job. I'm trying to get to an answer. I'm trying to, move forward. And maybe there are subject matter experts that don't make it very easy to facilitate that discussion. It's a little bit hard. That could be a little frustrating. But your second question was, what is something that brings me joy as an engineer? Well, I'll tell you, as a shipbuilder and being in the shipbuilding industry and having the opportunity to walk the yard and interact and help and actually see the people that I'm helping, that brought me joy. Knowing that I was helping somebody, one of our trades, do their job and get to do their job, and get it to a completion point. And that they get to go home, and feel satisfied with their job that they actually get to do. That was very fulfilling to me. So that's probably what brought me the most joy, just knowing that I was helping somebody in real life and that I got to see them.
That's great. And I think that sentiment is shared by every engineer on the planet. When I got married, my wife, I don't think she really knew any engineers. And so she kind of, before we got married, when we were, getting to know each other, she would say, well, what do you even do, right? Well, what is an engineer? And I told her engineers are professional problem solvers. That was my description. And that kind of clicked for her. And she's like, oh, okay, I get it. And so I've always had this belief that engineers are problem solvers. But someone I interviewed a few weeks ago said something that was really insightful and added to that definition. So engineers are certainly problem solvers. And what this person said, I can't remember who it was. I'd love to give them credit, but I can't remember who it was. Anyway, they said, I love solving problems that help solve other people's problems. And I thought that was a great qualifier, right? Because, we love to solve problems, but we really love it when the problem we solve, we see the direct impact that has on helping someone else. And just as people in general, I think we all like to help each other, but as engineers who are specially trained in these technical arts, right? When we can use that technical skill to solve someone else's problem and our solution helps them do something better, be happier, be more productive, whatever it is, it's hugely fulfilling for us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it has a big impact in our level of engagement as well. Because if you know that it's actually impacting somebody else's life, somebody else's job, then you work a lot, that much harder because you know what the result will be. But I feel like when a lot of engineers maybe stay in the office and they don't get to see the end result or the people that they end up impacting, that's when maybe it may even become monotone. It's definitely, I feel like my engagement increased by a lot once I got to see everything that I was, downstream.
That's a great point. Great point. Helping engineers see the impact, the effect that their work has on other people really drives engagement. Okay, well, Carla, what a great conversation this has been. Thank you again for taking some time and spending it with me today. How can people get in touch with you?
Sure. No, thank you, Aaron. I'm really glad that we got to chat today. I really appreciate it. I had a good time. Yes, I try to stay pretty active on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out on LinkedIn, that's great. If not, I also have my website, minettconsulting.com. So I have a little contact form, and anyone can just shoot me a message, and I'll be happy to respond.
Great. And that's Minett consulting.com, right?
Yes.
And we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Carla. I sure appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures, and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.